Hello, good morning, and welcome back to another episode of Psyched. I'm your host, Sule A. Joseph, a counseling psychologist by profession. But of course, by now you already know that. And we are deep into season 4. Season 4 of Psyched. We're going strong. Of course, on this program, we look at everyday issues and tackle them from a psychological perspective. Today, like every other program, we'll be doing just that. Today we'll be looking at potential or discrimination faced by the Indo community within Trinidad and Tobago. And as usual, I have a very special guest with me this morning who will help us discuss that topic, look at it historically, and look at the now. What are some of the factors driving it? Are Indo-Trinidadians discriminated against? We'll have that discussion. But before we get into all of that, my favorite segment, Psyched to Know.
Psyched to Know, brought to you by Sule Joseph and Associates.
Indian indentured migration began as early as 1834, and by 1845, the first ships arrived in Trinidad, carrying over 217 persons.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to Psyched. Those of you at home, thanks for tuning in. For those of you who are now tuning in, thanks for joining us. Today we are going to have a conversation on discrimination of the Indo community in Trinidad and Tobago. Joining me this morning to have this conversation is Pundit and spiritual leader, Pundit Satyanan.
It's a pleasure to be here, of course.
Thank you for coming, Pundit. How would you like me to address you?
Pundit Sat is fine.
Pundit Sat.
I'll make it easy on your tongue because after 100 and how much years, people still have problems with our names, as we were discussing earlier.
Yeah,
of course,
very
Spanish names, they have no problem.
In all fairness, to be honest, before you came, I was practicing the pronunciation and so
most people out of fear do that, you know.
It wasn't out of fear. I don't take any insult to persons mispronouncing my name because it's spelled, it's an unusual name. My name is actually African.
Yeah, I had to actually ask the girl because I didn't want to come across as in such a manner that I didn't take the time to learn how to
right.
So
but I don't.
Actually, in Hinduism, how we name children is very important. The name should be short. and easy to pronounce, and
Okay.
must consider the society in which we live in.
Okay.
So if we do that, then Sule is a name that is fits all that.
That fits. Yeah, that fits.
Fits
But
well.
you see, the thing, that name usually falls well because it's close to Sunil, which is usually an Indo, an Indo name.
So you can pass on
I can
any
pass.
side.
Yeah, I can. I can pass. I'm a
That,
true.
in this society, that helps.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It really does. And that actually is a nice springboard for the conversation that I want to have with you. One of the things, when I think about it, and we hear politicians having conversations about that, you at home who are listening, maybe you might have fallen guilty of it or have experienced it at least one occasion or two occasions, where we have Trinbagonians making fun of traditional East Indian names.
Well, I mean, we had that happening. We had that furore with members of the both political parties, the tit for tat recently, which I found to be infantile on both sides, quite frankly. Yeah. And not just infantile, but they've been taking the politics to a whole different low. And everybody needs to pull back from that and really check ourselves if we are to develop into a mature democracy. Coming back to names, yes, well, it didn't happen overnight. And the reason that we could live here, we're celebrating, what, 60 years of independence?
60 years, yes.
We're 60 years old as a nation, yet we do not even know our neighbors. And that is a sad thing. Now, it's not as bad as it was years ago. People are willing to mix and mingle without losing their own identity, which is a sign of maturing people, not fully mature, but maturing people. But the only way that this can become, that we can go past laughing at people's name, and to laugh at somebody's name I think is a great insult to their ancestry, to their people, to what they stand for, where they come from. My name identifies me. My name speaks to who I am. Hindu names really represent terms and qualities that we are supposed to live up to. My name is Satya Anand. Satya is truth, Anand is bliss. So my name should encapsulate the qualities I display in my life. So my life should be one of truth, and as a man of the cloth, I believe in the truth, and sometimes the truth has to be brutal, but not brutish, and honest. Yeah. And so when we understand what our names mean, and we understand how close a person's name is to their heart, and when we do that, it shows that our own immaturity, and it really points, and it shows that we are not really ready to live in a civilized society and mix with other people if we resort to belittling people based on their names only. Now, coming to let me bring this to you, discrimination. Mm-hmm. And we were chatting off air, and off air, I would have told you that the planting of East Indians here was as a direct result, historically, of the Haitian Revolution and the crisis in labor that erupted just after that with the freeing of African slaves. And even after at the end of slavery, there was a period of apprenticeship period. Yes. Right. And until having been enslaved, I can and treated in the worst possible way. In slavery, there's nothing that compares to the dehumanizing aspect of slavery. There's no comparison in history. So I could understand why freed slaves did not want to do that job anymore. Right. We must also consider our particular position here in Trinidad is that Trinidad was not as well developed as some of the smaller islands when it came to cultivation. So you found that there was a move from the islands to Trinidad. There's always been a move to here to settle by free blacks. Right. So that's happened. And then because we have Lavantil to prove that. Yes. Most of the people in Lavantil, Malik, and so on, they are just one generation and two generations here. They came recently. Yes. Right. They really came recently. However, because Indians were brought not just because they were good laborers, because they brought the Chinese first and they took Chinese from the ports, it didn't work out. If they had gotten Chinese from further inland, Indus might not have been here. Right? So the thing is that being a buffer race, and being a people really left to our own, because we were seen as migrant workers.
Right.
We had come to work for a period.
Correct.
There was never an intention of settling. And in lieu of passage, we were given land. And when we get land, people think about it as the best land. And the best land is not what we were given swamp.
Yeah, well, agriculture land, cane field land and so on. Yeah.
If we got cane field land was good, we got swamp. Right? So the villages grew up around swamps. You look at Pinal, Debe, all the swampy areas. Right?
That continues to flood.
That continues to flood even to today. So being left up to our own devices, we look differently, we ate differently, we dressed differently, we prayed differently, we had different gods, and so on.
Actually, that's the next thing I was going to come to.
Right.
Because
so it was easy, I think, to allow us to just be ourselves. And that cemented us, because even the language was different.
Right.
Right. So we were able to grow our communities really unaffected. I mean, we suffered like everybody else. We would have suffered. People were charged for leaving the estate and walking off and going to look for friends and things like that. But in essence, the idea of bringing East Indians had to do with creating a buffer race so that the plantocracy could feel safe. And what was seeded in the minds of both people is that you don't trust the other set, the other group.
Right. Right.
And that mistrust is not one-sided, it's both-sided. And we see it even
that
today.
continues to today.
Because
divide and conquer.
Traditionally, we grew up in different communities, you know, and Indo and African community is almost like a manikou. You see one once in a while. And the same thing was reversed. Now that we have mixed communities, you find a higher level of mixing, especially in gated communities, among professionals and things like that. So we see a different, but basically the two base groups remain in their own communities.
More or less.
South of the Caroni, on the East-West corridor, we see it in the political divide, we see it in voting patterns.
Correct.
And so for politicians, it's particularly for the PNM, it is good for them to keep that going, because that means that you're not going to look at policy. You're only going to vote because the man looks like you, or the leadership looks like you. And so there's a lack of political will because it works for the political interests.
Well, I wouldn't throw that only on the PNM. I would say that all political parties are currently
everybody has a base.
Yeah, there's a base.
Quite frankly, everybody has a base. The UNC, in all fairness, if we're going to be fair, has the greatest mixed. If you look at their senators, you look at their representatives, you look at the executive, you see a mix, especially during the people.
If you're being fair, the greatest mix might be the NTA. The NTA might have the greatest mix.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. But the thing is that all the other peripheral parties have no chance of getting into government because the base continues to be base.
Yeah, the base continues. Correct.
Without any real reason on policy, they just vote.
Now, I want to, because I have you here and I don't want us to run out of time, you did mention religion in terms of religious beliefs and gods and so on. And that's another question that I have in terms of potential discrimination faced by the Hindu community. If we are frank, we can say predominantly Trinidad is believed to be more of a monotheistic type of society, a one God, right? Whether it's through the Muslim or Christian faiths and so on.
The Abrahamic faiths, yeah.
Right, correct. Yeah. Do you feel as though there's still some mysticism or persons look down in some way against Hinduism because they feel...
But like I said, traditionally, we've been separated. And if you're not aware and you're not culturalized and you're not mature enough to be able to experience something that is not of yours and appreciate it and respect it for what it is, then there's going to be discrimination. Then there's going to be, that some kind of simi-dimi. Because what we see in monotheistic religion, if you're not on God's side, then there is an anti-God, which is the devil.
Right.
And a lot of our iconology lines up in people's mind with that narrow thinking. So because once you have that dogma that is set in your mind, that it has to be this and it can't be that,
right.
then of course your natural conclusion is that I don't want to be around that.
Yeah.
So I don't want that. I'll share a thought with you. I have apartments.
Right.
So I worked very hard. I am the inheritor of generational wealth.
Okay.
The wealth that I have is not of my doing. It's my father, my mother, my grandparents.
Right.
Coming down the line, I'm adding it. I'll pass it on to my children. Right. Hopefully they won't eat it all out in one generation. But the thing is that, so I had an interview to see with some people to come and see apartments.
Right.
They show up at my gate. My Jundy is flying in front of my yard. The woman shouts out to the car, I don't want to live by them kind of people. Always do beer. and they drive off. And I am left I am hardly left speechless.
Right.
But I was speechless because
I'm laughing, but it's not as funny.
Because I was told that the people who were coming
were
they worked in government and they had government jobs, so they could pay the rent and that kind of thing. So you were thinking that we mix with everybody and we're able to.
Right. Yeah.
And I was flabbergasted that this was a couple of years ago. So this it still exists today.
No, still very much so. The idea of flags also on
us
people
trying to
with
unknot this very tangled thing that has happened over the years. It can't be done in half an hour. It can't be done in a series. If I come back every Tuesday and talk till I die, it can't be untangled. However, the conversation has to start somewhere.
But it must start with a conversation.
And the conversation has to start somewhere.
And
we have to address, and even that, we have to address the education system. Now, the education system in this country does not address indentureship. Western history stops at when slavery ends. That's where it stops at O level. That's all you're going to be taught.
Yeah, but we didn't even I did history, and we didn't even get that deep into.
But I did too. So so we have things in common. And I teachers. I'm a retired teacher.
Okay.
So I did child psychology as my elective in training college.
Oh, nice.
However, I mean, because we were brought with that particular intent, I think that it is in the interest of a third force that is neither black nor white, no brown. I almost said white. To continue to keep us faced off against each other. Yes. And while they continue to control 95% of the brands that we have to go and consume. Right. And this is something that we have to be very... in Trinidad is something called country capture, where conglomerates with a few family own everything.
Just about everything.
Just about everything.
Yeah, about
they control everything.
About 6 of them, yes.
They control the advertising dollar.
Yes.
They don't like you, you don't get advertising for them.
Yes.
It's a sad state, but it is the state we live in. The fact that there's discrimination, and discrimination is bred because, and I said it's bred because it's encouraged, because it keeps a particular political party in power. And if that party is in power, then these other people continue. They're not challenged. They don't have to worry about it. You graze in their garden. You have to eat their grass, whatever. But the Ministry of Education has done little or nothing to really address the issue of race relations in this country. I will share one particularly enlightening situation for you. Now, I live in Arangwes. Arangwes is a predominantly East Indian community. It's changing because now we have other people buying land, building houses, moving into the community. We have renters coming in. So it's becoming a more mixed community.
My office is not too far from you, actually. I'm in Barataria. So.
Well, you're only rich people's side. So what happened is that I went to a school called Sawa Government Secondary. Right? So those were some of the first schools that Dr. Williams built. And so the children in the community wouldn't have to go to Port of Spain and fight up to get into CIC and QRC and things. So we went there. A couple of years ago, while I was teaching, I was invited to what was then Book Malatra's senior comp. Right? It was called North Secondary.
North Secondary, yes.
And the community of children there were mostly Afro-Trinidadians. Right? And when they asked me to say a prayer, and I was the feature speaker. So when I started to pray, the children started to snicker because they had not heard someone pray in a different language. But they were so, it was sad because they were now in their 5 years of education at secondary school and their 7 years of education at primary school and their 2 years of education at preschool, they were never taught to be respectful of the other groups that reside in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's either it came out of their homes or their communities or the school didn't do a good job Because what can't be done at home can be
Should be
fixed
done
in school.
Yes.
You have 8 hours of waking time with a child in school. You can fix it in school, right? By exposing them to different things that happen in Trinidad, different cultural activities. You don't have to believe, but you can experience and enjoy.
Right. Yeah.
So they started to snicker. And then, having come from the school just down the road, I understood where their situation was. Because I myself had gone to school with a lot of Afro-Trinidadians. It was a mixed school, so it was Indians, Afros, and that kind of thing. So I had, and I still have today, great friends that we spent 5 years together, 5 years of our life. We remain friends throughout. We still stay in touch. But I was able to, we were able to enjoy each other's religion, cultural expressions,
cultural differences, yes,
without that disrespect.
Yeah.
Now the children didn't even know they were being disrespectful. That's the thing at the other school. So I had to take the time in my talk to them to ask them what do they want. Now mind you, I roll in at school with a BMW.
But they respect that because they respect the
I was driving here, but
yes.
you driving a Beamer? I say, well, if you do, I do, you'll get one too.
So
they say, what is that? I say, go teach.
We're running out of time. But very quickly, right? Very quickly, I wanted to get into, we talked about the external factors of discrimination, but I kind of wanted to get into if there was any internal factors of discrimination within the Indo community, because I have some friends who are of East Indian descent, who speak about colorism. That's still a thing within.
It's still a thing in all communities.
Within
I mean,
the Indo
you're a
community.
Psychologist. You know that if you're a tall, good-looking fella and you go for a job, and you have less passes, less experience, you quicker get a job because you smile better than somebody who is competent and capable and has all the experience.
But what I wanted to ask though is again, it's just information for me because I really don't know. This is ignorance on my part. The Hinduism as a religious belief or practice, I know that the Indo community does practice the caste system in India.
Well, we will have to agree on the term first before we go further to discuss what it really means, and that is a couple of programs. The word caste is a Portuguese word that when they landed, they saw something and they say, okay, caste. Right? So that's an external.
Also, it's an
imposed view of what they saw in India without understanding the social structures that existed at that time. So the caste system is called Varna Ashram Dharma. It's based on the work that your father did. And remember, it wasn't a capitalist society. That's what we have. That's one of the first things we need to understand. It wasn't capitalist. It was a society based on spirituality. So it wasn't about making more money. It was about going inward. So your job was really about getting a salary, but not necessarily accruing wealth and becoming ostentatious, something like that. That wasn't the focus. And for Lord Macaulay, who designed the education system we use today in the West, it was designed for India, where they said, we have all these people, but all they want to do is pray. We want them to work harder. So that then began dismantling of that system. So that system worked very well for that because it was an organized society. Right. And if you know India at all, I lived there for a year, to organize anything in India is hard. Right? The amount of people I would imagine. Yeah. Exactly. So it was an organized society. And when we transplanted here, people came with we'll use the word caste, we'll cast it in a new light, and we'll use the word caste. It's Varna Ashram Dharma. It means the position of your father passed to you. So the priest's son became the priest. The king's son became the king. Right? Which is not a bad thing. Eh? The landowner's son became the next landowner. Because the society wasn't built on money only. So that's hard for us to understand. Well, then that changes. I mean, of course, we're running out of time already. But it changes the whole argument. It changes the argument a bit, because I was going to ask if that in itself does reinforce some measure of discrimination within the community itself. It exists here because the priest's son is still passing the job on to his son. Right? But now we have someone who is not of a priestly lineage. He wants to do it. Correct. Now, there is nothing that says he can't. This is a democratic society. Knowledge is free. Knowledge is available. We have something called parampara. Parampara means lineage of learning passed from guru to chela, meaning teacher to student. So yes, nothing stops them from doing it.
So, let me stop you. We are out of time. Could you, in closing, because we talked,
and we haven't touched discrimination as yet.
In closing, we were looking at some of the issues, discrimination faced by the Indo community in Trinidad and Tobago. What is, in closing, Trinidad and Tobago, they're looking at us, they're watching this program. What are the words of closing you'd like to leave for them? Something you'd like them to take away?
Quickly, let me just call a couple of police service, civil service, the teaching service, government teaching service, all the other armed forces, they are still predominantly not Indian. But we don't want it to be, we want some equity in the distribution of all of these as well. Not just, as Minister Hines said, we want black people to apply for more land. I would like black people to get more land, but I would want more jobs in the civil service as well. So if you're going to practice affirmative action, we want it across the board. Right? If we, now, the cabinet is a few people, If we, the people, see that, and to be fair, want that change, then the change will have to come. But if we are comfortable being biased and being practicing discrimination, then the change is never going to come.
All right. So in closing, I'm going to say this. I'm summarizing your words in this. What we want is affirmative action across the board.
Or none at all.
Or none at all. Equity. We want equity. Equity is what
everything in holidays. in
equity.
We want to make sure that you have a job. It can't be because you run a grocery. It can't be your family alone inside there.
Right.
We want to make sure that there's an equal opportunity for all people to be employed at all levels.
At all levels. So as I said in closing, we want to talk about would like to see equity. I learned a lot actually today, and I hope that you all at home learned as well, that yes, the Indo community does face discrimination, just like every other community does. And some of the areas in which they do, and perhaps there are some things that you do that you perhaps need to stop or take a look at and ask yourself, are you contributing to some of the misnomers and the discrimination that our East Indian brothers and sisters face? Right? If you do, at home, and you feel as though any of the information we discuss speaks to you personally, feel free to reach out to me on social media. Or if you have further questions and you need to get in contact, you want to get more information, feel free to reach out to reach out to Pundit Sat, right? I'm so sure you can reach out to him on social media, or his number is public, he says. So you can do that. And until next week, please God, same time, same place, right here on WESN. Stay psyched.
WESN.
Did you know the strongest muscle in your body is in your jaw? There are actually different ways in which muscle strength can be measured, including very technical differences of whether it exerts more force or pressure. The masseter is a muscle in the jaw that exerts the most pressure, as it can exert a force as great as 819 newtons. That's the equivalent of about 200 pounds. That brings me to bruxism, a condition where you clench or grind your teeth unconsciously, mostly in your sleep, and most commonly caused by stress, and less so things like age and substance abuse. Imagine subconsciously putting a force equivalent to 200 pounds on this small joint. well, the consequences can certainly be quite severe. You can damage your teeth by the gradual wear and tear, and there can also be damage to the joint at the jaw called the temporomandibular joint. I'm joined on set today with Dr. Chelsea Garcia. She's a palliative specialist as well as internal medicine doctor as well as hospice care. Welcome on set, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you very much.
So Dr. Garcia specializes in palliative medicine, internal medicine, as I said, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about what she does.
So I am the founder and the CEO of Live Health, which is a home healthcare company, and it's essentially developed in that we would like to keep our patients at home, the place they want to be most, and the best option for healing. Our goal, our priority, and our greatest joy is to allow people with serious illnesses to live the best quality of life from the comfort of their home.
So you say at-home care. I'm not sure how prevalent that is in Trinidad and Tobago before you came or at the moment. Explain to us a little bit more about what that involves.
So it's an all-inclusive approach in that we do our medical doctor visits at home. We also combine that with any medical equipment that you might need, medications. We provide this all-inclusive approach. It frees families as well as caregivers from the burden of, emergencies happen at 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, of going to multiple pharmacies, looking for the medications that you need or trying to source the medical equipment when needed, because when it's needed it's always an emergent situation. So the idea is to allow a service that gives families everything so that they could truly focus on the patient and allowing them to have the true comfort and true healing experience, as well as offset the caregivers and prevent caregiver burnout.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about who qualifies for at-home care. Is it anybody who's ill, or is it a particular demographic of illness?
So we treat anyone with serious illness, whether that illness is treatable or progressive. We typically see patients with high illness burden, significant symptoms, post-hospitalization, or to prevent rehospitalization. And we tend to care for the demographic of cancer patients, lung disease, heart failure, dementia, or anyone with multiple medical complex illnesses.
So that brings me to, you've mentioned things like cancer and long-term illness. That brings me to just the term palliative medicine. I mean, in Trinidad and Tobago, when we hear the word palliative medicine, sometimes people don't know what it is first to begin, and even those that do know believe that it's almost like a death sentence.
Yes.
So tell us what palliative medicine means to you.
So there is a very common misperception of the word palliative, and unfortunately it's among patients, families, as well as doctors, my own colleagues. What palliative medicine means to me. So my definition of palliative medicine is for anyone with a serious illness, whether treatable or progressive, that wants to have a focus on quality of life. We treat significant symptoms to be able to, for you to live your life for as long as possible, but for as best as possible. We don't only look at the medical approach, so it's really a holistic approach. So we combine medicine with psychological, emotional, allowing patients to view their illness positively so that they can have that positive mindset shift to be able to live with their illness. We also treat them the spiritual domain as well as their social domain. It's not just the patient, there's a whole family involved, and a lot of times we see patients at their most vulnerable time, and it's being that extra layer of support to give families that true multidisciplinary approach.
So you're specialized in both palliative and hospice care. What is the difference, and why is it important to distinguish between the two?
So it is extremely important to distinguish between the two. They are two completely separate entities, and a patient could benefit from both separately. So as I said, palliative is for anyone with serious illness, whereas hospice is for someone that may die in the next 6 months. Now, unfortunately, because people confuse the word palliative with hospice, we see a lot of patients presenting late in the course of their illness. And these are patients that have lived for months or years with treatable symptoms and could have had a major impact on their lives had we gotten them earlier. So it's so important to recognize that palliative medicine is about living your life to the fullest. And it is important to recognize to be referred to us as early as possible so that we can truly give you the maximum benefit that we have to offer.
So, I mean, I spent a little bit of time, as I mentioned before, in working in oncology, and I found it extremely difficult. It's emotionally taxing. You deal with, you mentioned the word death. You deal with very serious illnesses, and almost times people are most likely going to die. How do you deal with that as a medical professional where every day you're dealing with patients who are very ill, who are very sick, and who are probably going to die? What is your emotional status like?
So as I said, I deal with, my main focus is life and living. So when I get a patient, first of all, I'm comfortable with death. I recognize that unfortunately, we all have a time to go, and trying to deny the fact that one day we will all die doesn't benefit anyone. So my main aim when I have a patient is to give them that quality of life. And I think that by being there for a patient and uplifting them in a time that is most difficult and treating their symptoms so that they can truly live with their illness gives me that greatest joy. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't feel grateful for the opportunity to combine my life's greatest passion with my career. Because I truly believe that I'm able to lift up these patients and improve the quality of life for them so that they can live longer. So when I've done that for my patients and I've truly thought that I've done best by my patient, for me it's not about, I don't feel sadness when my patients pass, because their death, their death all the time is a beautiful process with very well controlled symptoms, at home, surrounded by the family that they love. And for me, that is something that I would want for myself and I would want for my family. And if I can truly give that to my patient, I feel a great pride in that.
So you just said death is a beautiful thing. Tell me a little bit about how the conversation with the family and the patient goes at the time when you have to explain to them that they have this terminal illness and they're more likely to die than they will live in the times to come. Tell me a little bit about how that conversation goes.
So let's talk about, I'll give you an example of one of the patients I had. So I had a very close patient of mine who was a young mother with metastatic, what we call cervical cancer. And she had 2 very young children. And over the course of months that I got to know her and treat her, she had aggressive symptoms. And when I met her, she was significantly depressed for the fact that she had such uncontrollable pain. She felt that her life was limited and that she no longer wanted to live because she was not able to be a mother to her children. As I worked with her over months, we truly controlled her symptoms, and with the control of pain came better sleep, came better healing. And as we worked with her mindset to really frame it in a positive way, her depression lifted. And she was now able to recognize that, yes, my life is limited, but I am here to live, and I want to live the best quality of life with my patients and essentially get the best out of the time that I have. And that's essentially what I did for her. And as we worked with her, we were able to deliver meaning-centered therapy. I helped her identify what is the meaning to your life. And for her, it was being a mother. What do you hope for? What do you want for the future? And one of her biggest things was, I feel that I'm not going to watch my kids go off to university. I feel that I'm not going to watch my daughter get married. And because we got her so early, and because she was now comfortable with the fact that, yes, my life is limited, but I'm living, she was able to do what we call legacy work. And with a series of letters and mementos, she was able to create the most beautiful letters and little tokens for her children along the way. So when it did come time for her to pass, she passed with such peace at home, surrounded by her family. And at that time, I truly can't get a better word to describe it, that a beautiful process.
Yeah.
Had we not been there, she would have not had that end, because she would have had so much what we call existential distress, recognizing that she was at her life's end, but was not able to do what she wanted out of life. And I think that she truly got what she wanted out of life, because she was able to actually deal with the limitation and make action for it in a positive way.
Yeah, so that's a really beautiful story, and I think that if there were more cases in which you could intervene, that people would be able to pass more happily, so to speak. So what advice would you have for fellow colleagues in the medical profession in terms of when a patient comes to the point of needing palliative care? Because a lot of times, as you said, it may be too late. What advice would you give to them in terms of referring to you or to someone in terms of that palliative specialist?
I would say anyone with a complex, serious illness that you feel needs an extra layer of support, there is no right time to refer to palliative medicine, and we really see all cases whether it is a treatable disease. I think the best testament to the benefit of palliative medicine is there was one study, the study enrolled lung cancer patients. So all the lung cancer patients in this study were receiving active chemotherapy. And half of those patients, they enrolled in a palliative medicine multidisciplinary approach. And then the other half, they treated the same, they were all treated the same, but they did not have palliative medicine.
Yeah.
And then they looked at these patients months to years later, and they said, okay, how did these people that have palliative medicine benefit? And lo and behold, they had better controlled symptoms, less pain, less depression, fewer hospitalizations, and I think that's a true testament to the true benefits of palliative medicine. If palliative medicine was a drug, I think we'll be the most profitable drug out there.
Yeah.
And it's really, a lot of colleagues, especially within Trinidad, they're not truly exposed to what I would call true palliative medicine, and because of the confusion between palliative and hospice, they're not able to identify the subset of patients that will be truly beneficial.
Beneficial to palliative care, yeah.
But I do believe that, I hope that with this shift, with recognizing that the two are separate entities, that we can have more patients that could benefit. It's about life, and it's about living with your illness, and I'm here to help facilitate that. And that's why I moved back to Trinidad, because who better to do that on my people and my country?
Absolutely. Would you ever consider a COVID patient for palliative care?
In the Live Health approach, which is really and truly the medical continuum, so internal medicine, palliative, into hospice, yes, we do treat COVID patients.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
We're talking about palliative medicine, we're talking about long-term illness, and we're talking about different things like cancer. What more appropriate time to talk about one specific condition that's now affecting the world, which is COVID. Now, COVID can range from very minor symptoms to very severe symptoms. Would you ever consider a COVID patient for palliative care? And is that part of your clientele?
Well, again, so COVID is a chronic, is a serious illness. So yes, in the Live Health approach, which is really and truly the medical continuum, so internal medicine, palliative, into hospice, yes, we do treat COVID patients. Because we are a home healthcare company, we do offer home PCR testing that is sent to St. Augustine Medical Lab. This was something that we actually fell into because our approach is to give our patients at home everything that they need without ever having to leave the home. And we started COVID PCR testing for our patients that needed a procedure or maybe needed to travel. And with the rise of COVID cases, we just had an exponential increase in the desire to have home COVID PCR tests. And we're expanding the service. We formed a COVID hotline. We developed home PCR testing within the Northwest region. And also then we were left with so many positive cases with high-risk patients that had serious illness. So we then decided that here we are, and just like our palliative medicine approach, we're here to treat you as best as possible. So we treat mild to moderate symptoms, and the approach is with a combination of vitamins and anticipatory medications. Once you're found to be COVID positive and you are deemed high risk, I deliver what I call the Live Health COVID approach. So I deliver a COVID kit into your home, and that has some vitamins, as I said, anticipatory medicines, but it also has a pulse oximeter where we follow them daily for a period of time, do regular check-ins, whether it's telehealth versus nurse check-ins, to monitor them within the home and make sure that we are giving the best care possible so that we can prevent people from progressing to severe COVID and to offset the hospital system so that they can treat the severely ill.
Because the hospital system is currently very overwhelmed, and it's nice that we have parallel systems apart from what the government has provided to help with this COVID care, and I'm sure that you're working together with them as well. So you trained at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, you then moved to the US, and now you're back here in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know if you remember, but one of the first times I met you was in a little cafe in Dublin called Avoca Cafe. And your spirit, you were just so genuine, your spirit was so bubbly, and it is no surprise that you've come from there to where you are now. And I'm really excited to see your growth and the doctor that you've become. But what I want to know is a little bit about, now that you've trained in Ireland, you've trained in the US, you've trained in Trinidad, and now you're back here to give back to your home country. Tell us a little bit about that road, and tell us also about what it's like being back home.
So I think everybody asks me this, and I think they're waiting for the response where I'm like, oh, well, I'm done, I'm ready to leave.
Yeah.
But I'm a true Trini. I'm a big patriot of Trinidad and Tobago, and I love my people, I love my country, and the more I work in the medical field is, I would say, the more patriotic I actually get. Because I do home health care, I see varied regions of the population, from low income to middle income to high income. And I get welcomed into these patients' homes from all areas of the country. And I see the beauty that Trinidad has to offer. The real Trini community, the love, the family community. It is just truly, sometimes I leave patients' homes and I'm just in awe of a family that comes together to rally around that patient and support them through their healthcare journey. And I would say that I love my role, I love my job. As I said, here I am with my life's greatest passion, combining it with my career and doing it with my people. And I've seen it, right? So the grass is not greener on the other side. And as Trinidadians, sometimes we don't realize what we actually have and the beauty that we have right here at home.
Yeah.
And that's why I actually came up with this Live Health company, because I feel like it's adapted on what I've learned from my experiences, both in Europe, both in America, but it's adapted with that Trini flavor to bring that, what I see as great medical care home, to prevent my patients from ever having to go to the hospital and to truly get the benefits from the place that they want to be.
So we're going to finish up now, Dr. Garcia, but tell me, what is your favorite memory, or your the memory that brings just great feelings throughout your medical career, your medical training to now? What's your favorite memory?
Oh gosh, I don't know, I have so many favorite memories. That's a tough one. I think that one of my favorite memories is, and I wouldn't actually say it's a favorite memory. I would say that because I trained, a lot of my training was in the ICU in the hospital, and I saw, you know, the ICU in the hospital is an amazing place for treatable, preventable illnesses. But because I trained there, I saw patients enter this medical conveyor belt, sometimes never to get off that conveyor belt. And they offered procedure after procedure, and most times never making it home. And I think it's using that experience and using those memories and seeing, I would say, being frustrated in the medical system and almost disappointed, and knowing that we can do it right. And that is essentially what I'm here to do. And it's using that, I wouldn't call it a favorite memory, but it's using that experience to create a better world. At the end of the day, it's not about the degrees that you have on your resume. It's about the lives you've it's about the lives you have uplifted. It's about the people that you have impacted positively. And it's what you as an individual have given back to the world. And I think that would be my greatest joy.
That's fantastic. So it's not about just lives. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to have great credentials under your name to make a positive impact. But Dr. Garcia certainly has done that in the field of palliative medicine, hospice medicine, and internal medicine. So we thank her so much for joining us today on What's Up, Doc.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss